Well, a marriage in turmoil, a past of pain and intimidation. Dusty and Kendra Dean share their journey to healing and how you can find peace and freedom too. If you're enjoying Table Talk, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Remember to click that notification bell to stay up to date on all of our latest posts. So is your life being defined by past pain? Has your marriage been spiraling due to struggles and having nowhere to turn? Well, life can often leave you broken and hurting, but there is hope, and today's guests know this firsthand. But before we get to their incredible story, joining me around the table is Anna Kendall, and you're connected to this story.
Connected to this story and to this couple, and I love them like they were on my own children.
I know, it was like...
Fred and I just love them so
many
much.
years ago.
Yes.
But it's just been amazing to watch what God has done with them. It's going to encourage a lot of people. Cindy Johnson, how are you?
Hey, I'm excited to hear their story. Yeah. I know them both, but I know the story that they have is going to be beautiful.
Dorothy Newton was sitting over here saying, we're telling all the stories of the women at the table.
I know, I love that. I'm learning so much more than I ever knew before. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
But I will say, you know, God's hope is always bigger than the pain, and there is hope when you know Him. So.
That's right. That's right. Cindy Murdoch, we love this girl sitting here.
We do. We love them both, and I'm thinking about, wow, if somebody thinks there is no hope or no way, they just got to listen to this story.
That's right.
There
and
is
we're talking
hope.
about the mighty Dusty and Kendra Dean. Pastors Dusty and Kendra Dean. We'll get into that, how they got there. It almost didn't happen, but it did. What could turn a vibrant young love into a battleground? Yeah, that's what happened. How can past pain hold someone captive, and when all seems lost, is it possible that God can turn it around? We got a song we're doing, God turn it around. He can restore hope and love, and that's what He did for Kendra and Dusty. They're here to share the answers to these questions that they learned, and I know it is going to help you today. Well, I want to say, first off, thank you for being here, because y'all, that was years ago.
It was.
And now you're
17 years ago.
Wow. 17 years
Can you believe that?
We just celebrated 18 years.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We're still married. Things are good.
Yeah, because if you celebrate, that's a good thing.
That's right, that's right. And of course, you guys are pastoring, doing great.
Yep.
Heartland
We
Church.
just entered, or about to enter, our 4th year of being lead pastors. We became the lead pastors 3 months before COVID, so I
That
feel
was
like
exciting.
we can take that on. We're ready for anything.
Great timing.
Let's go.
Great timing. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, let's just go back a little bit. Of course, Dusty, people will say Dusty Dean. You know that group, Phillips, Craig, and Dean.
Oh, yeah.
And Dan Dean is your dad, one of the members of Phillips, Craig, and Dean. So I'm sure you've been
best
identified as Dan Dean's, what did you say?
The best member.
Yes, yeah. Uh-oh. Okay, Dan, heard that. He loved it. But I'm sure you're identified as you were growing up at Dan Dean as your dad.
Yeah.
And he's had great success with his music.
Yeah, he has, and you know, for the most part, my life, I didn't know any different. You know, from the time I was 6th grade, that was our life. So it was funny. I would be out of school, and I'd call my dad and say, "Hey, are you picking me up today?" And he'd say, "No, I'm in St. Louis, son." And I'd just be like, "Oh, all right." And it was just normal for him to be on the road. And so that was just a part of our lives.
Yeah.
I was a church rat growing up.
You were one of those PKs.
Yes, I was. And I loved church.
These are two PKs. That could be dangerous.
Pastor's kids, that's
Two
right.
PKs getting together. Tell me about you growing up, and then we're going to hear about how y'all met.
Born in Texas. My family, we pastored in Brownwood, West Texas, for about 10 years. It was so much fun, loved it. And then my dad felt that, you know what, God is calling us to more. We're gonna learn some stuff and stretch. And so we moved to DeRidder, Louisiana, and we pastored there as a family for 10 years. And God did some really good groundwork in me in Louisiana.
Some good stretching.
It was during those pivotal years. I was 10 to 20. And it was during those years where he really taught me, I'm your God, not just your parents' God.
Yeah.
I have things for you, and keep your eyes off of the people and keep them on me.
Now, I met you at age
I think I was 21.
21.
21.
I knew it was right
21
around
or
there.
22.
And so when I met you, Kendra came to work here, and she's also a singer, like y'all had met years before. And Dusty, you kind of picked her out.
Do you want to tell the story?
Well, I mean, I can give my version.
Yeah, why don't you do that?
So I was living in Houston for a little while before I came to Dallas. There was an opportunity that came up to be a part of a ministry called Destined for Deliverance. And it's kind of like preaching, you know, singing and acting and all kinds of fun things. Sometimes there were sparkly gloves involved. And I had always known of the Dean family because before there was a Phillips, Craig, and Dean, Dan actually used to come and entertain at our church's Valentine's Day banquets. And so our families knew each other.
Okay.
But I didn't really know Dusty, or even that's who he was.
Yeah.
And so I walk into our very first rehearsal, and this 18-year-old, fair, he needed a tan.
Fair's
Fair.
a polite word.
Y'all,
Casper.
he had frosted tips. Came right up to me, and I was like, who is this kid coming up to me? And because I'm 3.5 years older than Dusty. And he walked right up to me, and he said, wow, who are you? I said, I'm Kendra. And he goes, wow, you're beautiful. I think I'm going to marry you one day.
You did not say that, Dusty.
He sure did.
With your white tips.
It was
Hey,
that
he was
NSYNC.
I think it was bye, bye, bye. You know.
And what was your response?
Oh, I couldn't stand him. I was like, who is this arrogant brat coming up to me? This little child. Like, I was just so...
She had a keychain sitting on the chair as one of those. Remember in the 90s, you would have a keychain that had your name and then what your name meant?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So I said to her, I said, well, see, your name is Kendra, and your keychain says that you're promoter of fame. That's what your name means. And that's going to work out perfectly because I'm going to be famous.
You did not say that.
And I was
I
like,
did say that. So
we were not off to a good start.
we didn't really gel at first. Let's just say it that way.
Okay, so at some point you guys did gel.
Yeah, so we actually, that started a series of fighting between the two of us, and it would get pretty petty. Like, he thought it was really fun at Taco Bell, because, you know, you're on the tour. It's a 3-week tour, the bus stops, you eat here
I
and there.
cannot believe you're about to tell this
I am
story.
so gonna share the story. We were at Taco Bell, and he thought he was so cute. He took those cinnamon twists, crunkled them up in the bag, and then just put them on my hair.
Oh, you
Like dust.
didn't.
Yeah.
And everybody started laughing, and I sat down next to her, and she laughed. And she took a full Coke and dumped it in my lap.
That was the kind of...
And that was when I knew there's something special about this woman.
Anna,
the
this is not
director-
starting out good.
No, we needed help from the start.
No, the director sat us down, Pastor Renee Clark, and she
I love
said,
her, by the way.
"Isn't she great?"
great, yeah.
Yes. And she said, "You two, y'all have to do a duet, and I will not allow y'all to fight and argue and let your humanity get in the way. You have to be anointed." She called it M&M, ministry moments or something. Like, she's like,
ministry mode.
Ministry mode. You got to get an M&M, and so y'all better figure it out and get along. We just kind of started talking a little bit and really getting to know each other a little bit more. And there was a moment where we're on the bus, and I'm sitting in the chair in front, he's sitting in the chair in the back. And you know how the seats come together and there's that little hole right there? So I can only see him through the cracks of the chairs. And he starts telling me about his dreams of how he's gonna be a pastor one day, which I did not want to pastor at all.
You'd been there.
I've been there, done that with my family. That was not, I was like, no, I still had work to do on my heart. And I heard Holy Spirit speak to me so clearly, because all I could see was his eyes, not the frosted tips, just the eyes. And Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, "You're gonna marry this man one day." And in my head, I said, "No, I'm not." And it just repeated itself and said, "You're gonna marry this man one day."
Yeah.
And this was just so out of the box, out of something that I would have ever imagined for myself. And then after that, I don't know, our conversations got a little different. And I just started staring into the eyes.
I called my mom. I said, "Mom, I think I found the girl I'm going to marry." And she said, "Really?" I said, she carries a first aid kit in her purse and everything.
That is so funny.
Always prepared.
Yes.
Okay, so when did you kind of know Dusty?
Pretty quickly, you know. I was still I was very young. I was 18 and very immature. And so I would say within the year, we realized that this is headed somewhere.
Yeah.
And so she got really involved in the church, and we dated for 4 years. And we did everything by the book that you would sit down with someone and they would say, do this, do this, do this. We did all of it.
You kept yourselves pure
We
during
kept
that.
ourselves pure.
For 4
We did
years.
premarital counseling.
Went to marital counseling.
We had accountability partners to help keep us pure.
So Anna, this is looking like it could turn around.
Oh, it is. Yes, there's
Yeah,
hope.
we had every tool. Really, we had every tool for
Every tool.
success. We did.
So anyway, the beautiful day came. Y'all had great pictures.
Marcus said that we were the next Batman and Robin.
That's right. That's right. He was prophetic.
It is. It's like a fairy tale day for us. It was beautiful. Our friends, family, everyone is there. And then we go on an amazing honeymoon.
Yep.
And then you can pick up.
Yeah, from the time the wheels touched down, it was disaster.
On the way back. from
Yeah.
the honeymoon.
Yeah, it was.
The honeymoon was
And we had
over.
some warning signs. We had a few, I would say, pretty big quarrels that were very unhealthy. But when you're in love, you just think, well, we'll just figure all this out on the other side, Marriage will fix it. Marriage makes it better. But all marriage really does is it magnifies problems. It doesn't minimize problems. I think the majority of people who are in unhappy marriages, not all of them have infidelity, not all of them have an addiction, but a lot of them are very immature. And they don't know how to communicate, and they don't know how to get along. And that was at the very root. We were very immature spiritually, and I was the most immature, but our fights would be awful, awful.
We did not know how to communicate. We didn't know how to genuinely celebrate one another for the successes. And because we were both pastors' kids, I think we grew up with this mindset of, well, we're supposed to have it all figured out. We did A, B, C, D, F, G. We should be winning right now. And it was almost embarrassing because we didn't know who to talk to. And would they think that we were disqualified from leadership if we actually told them, this is what's going on? And it was like that little apartment, man, those walls came in real quick whenever we came home from the honeymoon.
Do you feel like you were competitive against one another? Or?
Well, we're very strong personality.
No.
Both of us.
It's not you. I can pick up kind of around this time because you came to talk to me.
Sure did.
And she was going to give me the talk and tell me what God had said and what people had told them was the prophetic word of the Lord. And this is where you got to be careful.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'll let you pick up and say what I said
Joni.
to you.
Yeah. So we actually had a really big blow up. And this was like the mother of all blow ups, if you want to think of it that way. And to where we had gone into silence. Dusty would not talk to me for 3 days. And for an influencer, I had so many words I needed to say in here.
And be connected.
Yeah, and during that time, my childhood cousin, who was also one of my closest friends that we grew up, that was my childhood cousin, my buddy, he passed away. Dusty wasn't talking to me. He wasn't answering his phone. He would come in after I was asleep, or he would go to the other room. I couldn't tell him.
We call it stonewalling in marriage,
And so I was like, well, I guess I'm going to this funeral. I'm going to Houston to see the family. And I think you actually found out through Dan, his dad, because he had heard. And so it was at that moment that I was like, this is not a marriage. This is not my best friend. This, you don't do that to someone. And I was very guilty too. I had my own basket of problems that I needed healing in.
It was a basket too.
Oh, it might have been 12 and so or more. But you called me very unexpectedly and you said, hey, Kendra, I just have a question. How are you and Dusty? And anyone who's going through a separation or a divorce, you know that this is your moment to find Team Kendra because there will be people on Team Dusty, right? So I'm like, I'm gonna win her. This is my moment. I need Team Kendra to start growing right now. And so I just went blah and told Joni everything that I could think of in the past few minutes. And she was like, but Kendra, and I said, no, Joni, you don't understand. You married Marcus. He loves you. Not Dusty. And I just went through this whole thing. And Joni was so calm. And I'm so grateful. Oh, I'm so grateful for the wisdom that Joni had in that moment, because she said to me, in all my immaturity, she said, Kendra, if I paid for your counseling, would you and Dusty go? And I said, does my job depend on this? Like, I was
hear that too.
Yeah, and she goes, and this was what was so wise. She said, Kendra, I'm asking you if you can be obedient. That was like the only thing that could ever penetrate through me, really. And I was just like, fine. But the moment the counselor says that this marriage is done, I'm out, you know, kind of thing.
Were you starting to give up as well?
Well, when a marriage gets to this point, you know it's bad, but you don't realize that it's fallen off the cliff until it's fallen off the cliff. And now at that point, usually it's one person that says, well, I'll do anything, you know? What do I need to do? I went into survival mode. I'm gonna get her flowers. I'm gonna call her. I'm gonna do all the things that she said I wasn't doing for all this time. Well, when one person has shut their heart, you know, at that moment, like, I'm now officially close to you, and you start trying to do those things now, all it does is just make her more mad. And that's what was happening. And buddy, I was trying everything in the world. I was every manipulation tactic in the world to get Kendra back. But on October 15th, 2017, Kendra met me and Fred and Anna and read a letter stating that she was filing for divorce.
What, 2017?
I'm sorry,
No,
2007. 2007.
I was going to
Yeah,
say.
she was like, that was
2007.
You wrote the famous
2 years
letter,
after our marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So his parents were there, my parents were there, and Fred was there. And I read a letter out loud saying, this is it, this is over, this is why we're here. Fred gave us like negotiated terms for what a working separation would look like.
And I sort of in the meeting begged Kendra, would you just stay in the house, just live, you know, let's not make any decisions right now.
Yeah, I'd already found an apartment.
I met with Fred, and in the next couple of weeks, for the first time ever in my life, Fred presented a vision for me for what a real, true, godly husband looked like.
Wow.
And in fact, I just met with a guy yesterday and was sharing all the things I've learned, the very same things.
Wow.
Ephesians 5, it was there that I learned that a godly husband washes his wife in the Word and lays down his life for his spouse. And I felt so convicted. I mean, I really was cut to the core. For the very first time in my life, I'm staring at Scripture, and I realized I've never been this man. In fact, Fred looked at me across the table and he said to me, he said, I don't know that you've ever washed your wife in the Word. I tell people, I don't even really know if I was saved because I was a pastor, but there was nothing in my life that when I look back was godly. And, you know, people will know you by your fruit, and my wife didn't know me by my fruit. And the truth is that success is the love and the respect of people that love you the most. And I didn't have that from Kendra. I didn't have that from really anyone because I was a fraud. I was a fake. And I got so convicted. And so for the next 65 days, I went on a journey. I mean, we were not communicating at all. There were strict boundaries about that.
Separated.
We were separated. Yeah. But inside, there was something that came alive. And I remember Fred asked me, he said to me, he said, Dusty, are you willing to go through this journey? And I told him, I said, Fred, all I can tell you, I said, is it feels like right now I'm sitting in an interrogation room and there's a light shining down on me. And I said, I want to do everything that I can to pass this test. What I didn't know was that 6 months would go by, and that first 6 months, all Kendra would do is complain about me.
True.
In counseling.
Yeah. I genuinely believed that Dusty could perform for a few months. And then the counselors would see, this is done. And so in my mind, we separated in October, and in my mind, I'm thinking I'm gonna divorce in January, because there's no way he can be that fake that long, right? And so, but January came, and he was actually starting to talk differently. He started doing things that were so serving and so out of character of what he had done before. It made me pause and go, I don't really feel release yet to follow through with this. I'm gonna wait this out and just see what happens. So for this first 6 months, I mean, Dusty did work. He did. He did.
He was working how
My
many
dad,
jobs, too?
Yeah, my father has told me this. He said, there are not very many men that I know that would sacrifice and do the work that your husband has done to save this marriage.
The amazing thing to me was that everything Fred asked you to do, you did. And that doesn't happen in counseling a lot. You know, when you're counseling someone, they may do some of it. They may do part of it and maybe talk, you know, defend the rest of it. Dusty just submitted.
When Anna's talking, she's talking about her husband, Fred, because Fred and Anna do counseling. At some point,
Yeah.
it's going to have to.
The first 6 months, I am just griping to Fred. I'm rehashing, I'm reliving, I'm reciting. And I had no clue about the dream that Dusty had shared with Fred early on in his counseling sessions. And then I'm not kidding, right at the 6-month mark, I had a dream. And in my dream, Dusty was in a dark room, sitting at a table, and there was a bright light shining on him, and he was just sweating. And he was like fearful, you know. And I'm going, ha-ha, you know, like, yeah, get him, you know. And then all of a sudden,
Get him, God.
Get him, Lord. And then all of a sudden, that light turns from Dusty, comes around, and poof, now it's on me.
Yes.
And I'm on the other end of the table. And when I woke up, and I know this isn't very righteous, but when I woke up, I went, oh, crap. Because I knew for the first time, okay, Kendra, now you have to grow up. There's so many things that you've never dealt with from the past that you have to deal with. You have to forgive. And I had a long list of things from when we pastored in DeRidder that I had to forgive people from, and on top of what we were going through and Dusty, because I would take all that past pain and use it as a filter to project it on Dusty.
Yeah.
And so the counseling is just so important. You have to, so we were in, it wasn't until 6 months that we got in the same room together. So we went every week for a solid year to counseling, and the first 6 months we weren't even in the same room.
But you were amazed at what you saw in him.
Oh, it was
difference, you're like,
mind-blowing.
is this really God? Could this be? And it really was, and it began to open your heart, and then God was able to start healing your heart.
Yeah, and one of my fears was that it would be a performance. So what I asked God was, I need you to reveal it to my family and my closest friends that they see the change in Dusty, because I don't want to be fooled. And whenever my best friend Kimber would say, Kendra, are you sure about this? Because Dusty's done this and this and this. And then my father is sitting here saying, Kendra, I know I don't know everything, but man, he really is doing something. This is pretty amazing what he's willing to lay down for your marriage.
What I've learned about marriage is that some people, you know, the old adage is that it takes two. Really doesn't take two, it takes one. It takes one that's willing to give 100% when the other will give 0%. The reason I say that is because that's the comparison that was used in Ephesians 5. Christ laid down his life for the church when the church was giving 0. And he, now at some point, obviously, you know, you got to put your best foot forward, but in faith, I went first. And maybe somebody watching today needs to hear that. Like, in faith, you need to go first, you know, right now in your marriage.
Okay, when was the coming together? Like, was that a year later?
It was a full year.
Cruise,
it was on that cruise. Yeah, Fred had an assignment for Dusty and I to go back to DeRidder together, to where I would go through my house, my school, and the church, and share all these memories so that he could put a face, if you will, to the pain. And that was a huge healing moment for both of us. And an understanding. And then right after that, y'all said, I think Dusty needs to come on the cruise. And I said, And I said, but Fred, I have to work. What if something, and he goes, Kendra, I will just pitch him overboard. And I was like, okay, Fred. And so we were waiting, and then.
Because Fred and Anna were on the cruise.
They were with us. And I had a dream. And John Paul Jackson interpreted that dream. And it's a long one, but to sum it up, John Paul Jackson looked at me and said, Kendra, it's time for you to get your hand off Jesus' knee and let him drive your car of your life. He's got things that he wants you to do, and it's time to let Dusty come back. And so exactly October to October, Dusty moved back in.
So what was the difference when y'all came back together that after all the counseling and?
Oh, well, there was a lot of humility there, you know, forgiveness, trying to serve each other and really communicate, which the life languages was a huge tool for that.
That's another whole show, folks.
Yeah.
The Kindle life languages, yes.
I think that for the very first time, we had the conviction of the word, you know, and we got back in the same home, and look, we had to practice, then we would play, and we wouldn't get it right, and we'd go back and, you know, rehash some things. So it's not like it was just perfect, you know.
It was still growing.
It was still growing, but we were willing, and we had the tools, and what we really had was the word. And what I had was a conviction that I will never allow myself to be the kind of leader that I was again. And that's been our whole marriage up to this point.
What a miracle testimony. And
today, God's used that story
over and over to help so many people. Congratulations, you two. And we do just expect, and I've told you this privately, to see even greater things ahead for both of you. And just, we're out of time, but Dusty, just look in the camera, encourage that person that's watching right now that's ready to give up.
Yeah, I just want you to know today that you're not too far gone for God to do something in your life, but it starts with submission, and it starts with the humility to say, I don't have all the answers, and I need to find the one that does. And maybe today you just need to give your life and your heart to Jesus, or if you've already done that, you need to resubmit yourself all over again to His Word, because it's His Word that will change the foundation of your life. It changed my life. I thought my marriage was over, and God did a work in me that I look back at and I can't believe. Kendra says it today, that you're not the man that you were 16 years ago. And I want you to know that you don't have to be the woman, or you don't have to be the man that you are right now, but you have to go first. You have to be willing to allow the Lord to do a transformational work in your heart.
And I want to add to that is you were first to go, but at some point, Kendra had to open up her heart to allow God to do.
Absolutely.
And, you know, if somebody doesn't open up, if that other party doesn't, there's nothing you can do to override that free will. But you did want the will of God in your life, and God knew that.
Absolutely.
And, you know, Dusty said something that was so important just now. He said, you know, the most important decision that you'll ever make is to invite Jesus in.
Amen.
And really, we'd be remiss if we didn't say that today, that, I mean, just cry out, and say, Jesus, I need you. Come into my heart, come into my life today, forgive me.
Yes.
And He will do that, and that's the most important part of the journey. Really, I don't see how you can survive what you're going through without that. So make that decision today. Well, we're out of time, but I know you've been blessed by Kendra and Dusty's story. I want you to remember that no pain is too big for God to heal, and God can restore your marriage if both hearts are open. Dusty said, I had to go first. And I think that's really important to mention. He was the man, the head of the house, and not in a lording over kind of way, but he took that responsibility and he learned from Fred how to be the man of God that God had called him to be. And of course, on the other side of the struggle and hurt, whatever you're going through, you have to remember it's a bigger destiny than you could ever imagine. I'm sure when Dusty was in the middle of everything falling apart, he could have never imagined himself sitting here today and doing what he's doing. It is a miraculous story. If you're watching today and you want God to touch your life, maybe you need a miracle in your life. Maybe you need healing, restoration. Maybe in your marriage, maybe in some other relationship. I want you to know that's why that toll-free number's on the screen. We would love to pray with you. Our prayer partners would be honored to pray with you today. And so call that number. Let us pray with you. If you prayed that prayer, if you invited Jesus into your heart today, call us. We're going to send you a free book entitled, Now What? Where do I go now? And today is the beginning of the best day of your life when you surrender your heart to the Lord. Well, I want to thank Kendra and Dusty for joining us. For more on their ministry, you can visit them online at the heartlandchurch.com. For those in the Metroplex, Heartland Church is located
Carrollton, Texas.
in Carrollton, Texas. And everybody invited?
Everybody.
Come on down.
Let's go.
You'll hear Dusty preach. He's a good preacher, too. You might even hear Kendra preach and sing a little bit.
Come on.
Well, as always, let us know how today's Table Talk has touched your life. You can leave us a comment on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. I'm excited about what God has for you. I hope you've been encouraged. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for today.